We've been making an exploration into form is emptiness and emptiness is form. And the question's been asked, is it a paradox that has to be reconciled? Is it a conundrum or a puzzle that we have to examine the pieces and put them together like some jigsaw? Or is it a riddle that has to be solved? Or maybe it's none of these. But in any event, over these last days, several stories have been told that begin with a king who did not earn or win his kingdom, but became a king because of his inheritance, his father before him being a king and his father's father before him being a king. And this is an important point, because this story is also about a king who did not win or gain his kingdom. So let's play a little with this. This king, again, was pampered and fawned upon and had everything that a king could ask for. His kingdom was blooming, etc., etc., etc. But one day, this king was out on his great yacht sailing in a lake that he loved to do. But as he was coming back to shore, he espied a fisherwoman on the banks of the lake. And even though she was not particularly beautiful, something touched him about this woman, and he could not get her out of his mind. He tossed and turned and thought about her, and he asked his advisor to go out and find out who she was. So the advisor went off and came back and said to the king that this was a fisherwoman who was happily married to a fisherman who was greatly revered around the area as being a very kind man. But, said the advisor, you know, you're a king. You can have whatever you want, whatever your conscience will allow. So all you have to do is dispose of the fisherwoman's husband, and she will be yours. So they devised a plan, and they invited the fisherman to the palace, and the king said to the fisherman, I want you to present yourself to me tomorrow, neither riding nor walking. And he said, if you cannot do so, I'm going to lop your head. So the fisherman went back in great state of despair. How could this be done? He spoke to his wife about it, and his wife said, don't worry, I'll go and talk to my sister. And so she went off and spoke to her sister, and the advice that was given to the fisherman was, tomorrow morning when you go to the palace, you take our donkey, which is of very small stature, and you ride on its back with your feet dangling on the ground. So the next morning the fisherman went off, riding his donkey but walking along beside it. So when the king saw this, he was quite disgruntled, and he had to devise another plan. So he said, I want you to come tomorrow, neither naked nor clad. So again, fisherman went back and consulted his wife. He said, "Don't worry, I'll ask my sister." So the sister's advice was, tomorrow morning, wear nothing but your fisher net and present yourself to the king. So the fisherman went off, and of course the king could see that he was neither clad nor naked. So he had to devise another plan. So he thought he would be very tricky this time. He said, "Tomorrow I want you to bring an infant to me who can tell riddles." Well, this was an enormous problem for the fisherman. So he went back to his wife. He said, "Don't worry, I'll ask my sister." And it came back with the advice that yes, the sister indeed knew that an infant who could tell riddles would have to be half human and half jinn, or half demon, as we would call a jinn to be. And there is such an infant living in the village nearby. So the next day the fisherman went, bringing with him this infant, just a few months short of a year old. And the king guffawed and laughed, how can an infant tell riddles? And the infant spoke, "Honorable Majesty, not only can I speak, but I can tell tall tales." Well, the king loved tall tales, so he said, "Tell me a tall tale." And the infant told the tale. He said, "I was very, very poor in another life, very poor, very penurious. But one day I went out and I saw a date palm, and it was laden with dates, but the dates were too high for me to reach. So I started to pick up clods of earth, which I threw up to dislodge the dates on the tree. But because the dates were sticky, all the earth stuck to the dates and made a field. So I took a bag of sesame seeds and I threw them up into the date palm, and then I climbed up and reaped. And after this I became very rich, wanting for nothing." But he said, "I have a problem, and you are obviously a very wise king." Well, by this time, of course, the king was taken in completely. He loved tall tales. "Oh, do, ask me. And so the infant said, "Well, I have this problem. There's one sesame seed that's lodged itself in the crevices of the palm, and I can't get it out. What should I do?" Well, the king thought for a while. He said, "Why, you foolish child," he said, "you've got everything. You're rich, you've got all that you need. Why you worry about one sesame seed?" And the infant said, "Well, Your Majesty, why don't you take your own advice?" And the king said, "What?" Well, the infant said, "You have so many women who fawn over you and give you attention, you can make your choices between any of them. Why do you worry about one fisherwoman?" "Oh," said the king, "yes, I've got it." And he said to the fisherman, "Go back, here's a bag of gold, be happy with your fisherwoman wife." Of course, which they did so, living happily ever after. And lots of sons. But the moral of the story, and just paraphrasing this moral a little. If it's a paradox, and we recognize it as a paradox, then it's already been reconciled. If it's a conundrum or a puzzle, recognizing that you cannot have pieces of a puzzle without having something to lay it on, which itself is whole. And if it's a riddle, it can only be solved if we have a realization and awareness of the first two, the paradox and the conundrum or puzzle. So, how does this story relate, we might say, to this and our exploration into form is emptiness and emptiness is form. The paradox, the puzzle, and the riddle. How do the pieces of this story come together, which might give us a clue into how paradox, conundrum, and riddle go together? The story. Neither walking nor riding, neither clad or unclad. The child that's both human and jinn. The king. How do they fit together? The king realized how can it be that paradox, puzzle, and riddle can come together to bring us a realization of the meaning of form is emptiness and emptiness is form. Is that messing with your head or what? Good. Thank you, thank you.